Hello, welcome to Lewiston City Council. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll be led by the Honorable Mayor Paul Dion.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin this evening, I would like to recognize Elaine Brackett. She received the Housing Champion of 2022 from the Quality Housing Coalition. Director Brackett has been helping people her entire career. We appreciate her dedication to the city of Lewiston and its residents for over 3 decades, and she is incredibly deserving of this recognition. Thank you very much. Elaine, yes, Director Brackett, thank you very much. And now we'll begin with Lewiston Leads, where we recognize Lewiston residents who have either gone above and beyond or done a lot for the city. And Ward 4 Councilor LaChapelle will begin.
Mr. Reed, would you join me up front? Bob Reed is my choice for Lewiston Leads. During his senior year at Edward Little High School, his mother gave him a choice between getting a job or volunteering someplace. Bob chose the latter option and became a volunteer at the Boys Club on Bartlett Street. He has not looked back since. After receiving his BA in Business Administration, Bob and his wife chose to live in Lewiston, where they purchased a home and raised their 3 sons, always supporting their many activities and sports teams. Bob's volunteer activity at the Boys Club and being a dedicated and proud father of 3 sons led him to the Scouts, where he volunteered locally and on district projects and events for over 25 years. Bob has also contributed many years of service and expertise directly to the City of Lewiston's governance. In addition to serving for 2 years on the City Council, he served for 11 years on the Finance Committee. He was on the Naming Committee for Connors School, as well as High School Expansion Committee. Bob was appointed twice to the Solid Waste Recycling Committee and currently serves as the Lewiston representative for Androscoggin County Budget Committee. Bob recently completed 5 years on the advisory board for Looking Ahead Clubhouse, which serves community members with physical and mental health challenges who seeks to re-enter the workforce through the support of vocational rehab. Bob was instrumental in getting a bus added to the clubhouse and was able to secure new employers for clubhouse members, including the City of Lewiston. While true to old school values, Bob is not one to draw attention to his service and generosity to the world around him, which has included being one of the forces behind the Jaden Chow Sargent Memorial Garden, dedicated to Jaden and his loved ones. True to this spirit, after a local student drowned while on a school outing and finding out that many could not afford swimming lessons, Bob had the idea of setting up a scholarship at the YWCA called Buddy Up, dedicating funds for those unable to pay for swimming lessons, provided while still adhering to cultural norms and practices for a multi-ethnic community. Professionally, Bob has spent over 30 years in healthcare reimbursement and financing, having worked for some of the larger medical practices, including rural health and nursing facilities, and is a resource to many providers statewide. Currently, he is the executive director of the Maine Chiropractic Association, providing administrative duties as well as marketing, legislative, and other assistance to over 300 doctors in Maine. He is co-chair of the Maine Alliance of Healthcare Professionals and has been a frequent appointee to various Medicare projects representing various healthcare entities. Bob is an expert watchdog over the use of taxpayers' monies and is always willing to give fellow citizens and officials alike crash courses in finances. Above all, Bob remains dedicated to a better Lewiston and will always be a fierce defender of the good he continues to see in the city he calls home. With that, I'd like to present you the Lewiston Leads coin. Thank you so very much.
And now we have a presentation from the Ward 6 Councilor, Councilor Clement.
Tonight's Lewiston Leads comes to us from away, as we say up here in our Down East dialect. His resume is as long as it is broad, and with good reason, as you'll soon see. Our honoree at age 10 in 1950 followed his father to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where he stayed before returning to San Diego to finish high school, as school only went to the 9th grade in the kingdom. After high school, he was drafted into the Army, spent a tour in Germany. Next came college, and while there, he applied to the U.S. State Department. He was accepted and destined to go to Damascus, Syria, upon the completion of the required indoctrination at the Foreign Service Institute, where he was schooled in such important things as what forks to use with what while dining. In the interim, the embassy in Damascus was bombed and ultimately closed, so he was diverted to Rawalpindi, Pakistan. The really interesting thing about all this is a young lady had just arrived there a week earlier from, you guessed it, Lewiston. They soon met and were married a year later. That was 55 years ago. Life moved on, and after leaving the State Department, this gentleman became involved in the aviation industry, from which he retired after 30-plus years in the kingdom. Along the way, a family was raised. Their adult son and his family currently reside in Ohio. In 2003, the search for a retirement community began. San Diego was not an option. Oregon was too damp and wet. New Zealand wasn't quite right, so Lewiston it was, and the current chapter began. Apparently, retirement is not a word that he either Googled or looked up in the proverbial Funkin' Waggles, because shortly after arriving and settling in, he became interested in local politics and government service. And, as history will show, he served our great city in the following positions, just to name a few: Cable TV Advisory Committee, the Auburn-Lewiston Airport Committee, the 911 Committee, Lewiston Planning Board, 2 terms, Lewiston Board of Appeals, Lewiston Finance Committee, 2 terms, Lewiston Charter Review Committee in September of 2011, Lewiston Election Poll Volunteer, 16 various elections, Historic Preservation Review Board, Bates Mill Number 5 Task Force member, Lewiston Police Chief Selection Committee, Riverfront Island Master Plan Committee, Census Complete Count Committee member, City of Lewiston Recycling Committee, the Maine member of the United States Commission on Civil Rights, board member of the Lewiston Auburn Railroad Company, Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee, current member, Community Development Block Grant Committee for 3 terms and a current member. Most recently, he served with me on a Finance Committee Selection Review Subcommittee to recommend the awarding of a bid for services to provide city buildings with updated energy control systems. I'm not sure what it is you're supposed to do when you retire, but I think we can all rejoice in that tonight's honoree chose to become involved and serve his adopted city. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Paul Robinson. Paul, if you join me up here. Paul, this token of our recognition and esteem for your service to the city of Lewiston, and our thanks for doing everything. And now to Polly, I think I see her back there. I just want to say that we want to give her our thanks for enticing, leading, or just plain dragging you here. So everybody, if we could, a round of applause for Paul Robinson tonight.
Number one, 2 of the smartest things I ever did was marry Polly. The other was, when it's time to retire, we came to Lewiston.
Thank you both to our Lewiston Lead recipients. Another round of applause for them, please. Can I have the winning Lewiston High School mock trial team come to the front, please? Everybody.
Wrap right in here, guys. Wrap right around.
Don't bite.
All the advisors, all the attorneys, everyone's up here. So tonight I'll be recognizing the Lewiston High School mock trial team for winning the December 5, 2022 state championship. Whereas the Lewiston High School mock trial team's skills and performance surpassed Cheverus High School, Casco Bay High School, and most recently Brewer High School at the December 5th state championship. And whereas Lewiston State Championship qualifies the team to represent the state of Maine at the national competition in Little Rock, Arkansas, May 18th through 20th, 2023, and whereas at the national competition, LHS will join winning teams from across the country and abroad, and whereas mock trial competitions consist of students taking the roles of attorneys and witnesses in a hypothetical criminal trial, with students playing the roles of victim, defendant, expert witness, is there another kind? And other witnesses, while student attorneys make opening and closing statements and conduct direct and cross-examination of witnesses. And whereas trials are conducted before Maine judges and attorneys who grade the students on their preparation, mastery of facts, the law and the rules of evidence, and their demeanor and poise, Maine Supreme Judicial Court Chief Justice Valerie Stanfill presided over the finals competition. And whereas this year, the mock trial team consists of students Ava, Ben, Sarah, Gabby, Taylor, Hayden, Olivia, Ethan, Gabby, Kim, Adri, Victoria, and Haley. And whereas appreciation is extended to mock trial teacher coach Michelle Crowley, who was a former team member when attending LHS, and as coach, this is her second state championship. And whereas appreciation is also extended to coaching attorneys Paul Dion of Dion and Coutier Law Firm, Amy Dietrich, is Amy here? No, okay. Of Skelton, Tainter, and Abbott Law Firm, retired attorney Ron LaBelle, formerly of Skelton, Tainter, and Abbott, as well as recent LHS graduate and mock trial alum Dominic Pelletier, hello, who provided coaching support throughout the season. Now, therefore, I, Carl L. Schelin, Mayor of the City of Lewiston, do hereby officially proudly recognize the Lewiston High School mock trial team for their state championship mock trial win and bestow best wishes as Big Blue takes on the national mock trial champion in 2023. A round of applause, please.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. Thank you all.
Right. Thank you. This is the easy part. This is.
We have so many winners here tonight. Can I have the Connors Elementary Civil Rights team come forward?
Yeah. Come on up, guys.
Don't be shy. So we'll be recognizing the Connors Elementary Civil Rights Team for making National Christmas Tree Ornaments. Whereas the Robert V. Connors Elementary Civil Rights Team is a group of students who meet after school twice a month, working to make the school a more inclusive and welcoming space for everyone. And whereas their work is grounded in the Civil Rights Identity Wheel, which includes national origin and ancestry, race and skin tone, religions, disabilities, gender identity and expression, and all kinds of love. And whereas the Civil Rights Team at Robert V. Connors Elementary recently made history at President's Park in Washington, D.C., and whereas the Department of Education was seeking ornaments for the Maine State Christmas tree in D.C. and reached out to Kelsey Bushy at Connors Elementary, and whereas the Civil Rights Team seemed the perfect fit since religion is a part of the Civil Rights Identity Wheel, and the team talks about different holidays. And whereas the team took on the project, decided the ornament theme would be welcoming, belonging, inclusivity, and definitely left their mark at the President's Park. And whereas Connors student leaders who rallied to the occasion were Riley, Feza, Eleanor, Naima, Nor, Olivia, Landon, Cheyenne, Isabel, Madison, Xavier, Vanessa, Zoe, Miles, Bruno, Lukeman? Oh, hello. Connor, Cadence, Andre, Willow, Abdi Zirak, Sydney, Bernard, Peyton, and Zoe. And whereas appreciation is also extended to advisors Kelsey Bushy and Nazreen, as well as admin advisor Travis. Travis. Hi, Travis. Thank you very much. And whereas the City of Lewiston is extremely proud of the artwork and creativity its students graced President's Park as the sole decorations on the Maine's Christmas tree. Now, therefore, I, Carl L. Shaleen, Mayor of the City of Lewiston, do hereby officially recognize the members of the Connors Civil Rights Team and applaud their dedication to representing both Maine and the City of Lewiston in stellar fashion. Thank you so much. So I don't know if we can zoom in on this, but this is one of the ornaments. They were made by Mark Rodrigue. Thank you very much, Mark.
Ready? Oh, there you go.
And then you hold this.
You hold that.
Hold it up.
There you go. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1.
Can I please have another round of applause for the Civil Rights Team and the mock trial team? Thank you both so much for representing your city.
Yeah, you guys don't have to stay.
Madam Clerk. Yeah, that's what it means. Madam Clerk, we're going to give it just a minute here. I was going to say I'm learning after a year here. I'm learning.
Oh, I kind of figured it was.
And I have. You're like.
Oh, I've got one for you, sure.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
I'll give you an electronic file of that. I'll ship it to Dottie tomorrow.
Yes,
It's not. No, there's a lot to keep track of.
It's copyrighted, Angie.
This is. I have other talent.
Is that? I've never met her. I've talked to her on the phone a million times. I knew that, yeah. Interesting. She's been an election worker and I've just never met her. She's a name on a piece of paper to me, so. Well, that's nice. I've talked, like I said, whenever I call. she always-
Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the counselor of Ward 2.
And we have minutes?
No, you do not. I apologize. So
Oh.
I apologize. We will get those to you, I promise, next week. I'm
We
so
will have
sorry.
minutes in the new year then?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, sir.
And now we're up to our public comment period.
Yes.
Oh. Any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government. This period is reserved for non-agenda items. Public comment is also allowed during individual agenda items. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name for the record, and please indicate if you're a Lewiston resident. Because this is the business meeting of the Lewiston City Council, all questions should be directed to the mayor, who will ask staff to follow up at a future time. It is illegal for the City Council to allow comments related to personnel matters. All personnel complaints should be made directly to the City Administration Office. Do we have any public comment for non-agenda items?
Good evening. Robert Reed, Ward 7, as you already know. I'm one of the people who watches the meetings usually at home either that night or the next day. I know you recently, last week, had a workshop on solid waste, recycling, and I was wondering why nothing was mentioned about MWAC. So I just want to put a bug in your ear. MWAC is one of the oldest incineration plants in the state. We're not a member town, but we get a very generous rate from MWAC to bring our trash there and take the ash out. And I just ask that you ask what's going on at MWAC, where that facility is in relation to current DEP regulations and what might be coming down the pike. It's an older facility, and my concern is, are we planning for the future? If we're really looking at solid waste and recycling, let's make sure that MWAC's part of that system, or that we have something ready to go should that system have to change. Thank you.
My name's Melissa Dunn. I live at 254 Blake Street in Lewiston. I know you said the direct questions, but you said something, it's illegal, and I wanted to know, is it arrestable? Or what do you mean by illegal? Is it against an ordinance? I need clarification.
So, yes, we will not allow public comment about city personnel, but I will have a city administration follow up with you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Madam Clerk, agenda item number 1.
Sure, item number 1, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for fast breaks, 1465 Lisbon Street. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment for fast breaks, 1465 Lisbon Street.
We have a motion. Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor McCarthy. Discussion? Councilor Clement.
Mr. Mayor, just a minor thing here. The date of the application, 12/7/2022. Expiration date, 12/14/2022. So I assume that must be 2023.
That is correct, yes. Thank you.
Okay. If we could change it to that, then no problem.
Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk.
Counselor from Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Agenda item number 2.
Item number 2, public hearing and final passage regarding an amendment to the offenses and miscellaneous provisions ordinance to prohibit loitering, camping, sleeping, or remaining on city-owned properties between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. Requested action, the proposed amendment to the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 50, offenses and miscellaneous provisions regarding the prohibition of loitering, camping, sleeping, or remaining on city-owned property between the hours of 5 p.m. and 5 a.m., between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m., receive final passage by a roll call vote.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor LaChapelle, followed by Councilor Clement. Anything you'd like to start off with, Chief St. Pierre?
I think this is just the final reading. I believe last first passage, we voted to bring it in front of the our legal team, just to change a few words. We had sunset to sunrise in there, for example. We had certain words like be at or remain. I think we removed the be at, and then also allowed, that the city administrator could grant permission for somebody to camp on the public lands.
Thank you. I think we have several members of the public here to speak on it, and so at this point, since we had discussion at the previous meeting, I want to start off with public comment. So public comment for this agenda item. Please, step up to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Padam, and I'm a resident and landlord here in Lewiston. I'm speaking on behalf of the City of Lewiston's Housing Committee. The Housing Committee is charged with advising the City Council on the full range of housing issues facing Lewiston, which includes people in this community without a home. There have been a number of housing challenges that have come to this Council's attention, including those of our unhoused neighbors. After reviewing the proposed ordinance, members of the Housing Committee were left with a number of concerns. The first is, if people who are unhoused don't have access to a shelter, and as this ordinance is written, aren't allowed on public property, where are they going to go? If the council passes this ordinance as it is drafted, you will criminalize people who don't have a home. This ordinance would leave them no choice other than sleeping on private property, which is also unlawful, and will create an additional burden on private property owners and law enforcement. For unhoused people who are living in cars, many of whom are families with small children, what kinds of challenges does this ordinance pose for them? If an officer moves a family along at 1 a.m., where are they going to go? How does the city plan to notify people who are unhoused about this ordinance change? Are there plans to address a potential surge in court summonses that may result following the passage of this ordinance? This ordinance, as written, takes our city's homelessness challenges and passes them from one system to the next. In this case, from public property to privately owned property, and from a services and law enforcement issue to a courts issue, without solving anything. I believe that we all want what is best for our city. I know that we're all concerned about Lewiston's negative image and want to do what we can to improve it. It's part of why I serve on the Housing Committee. However, this ordinance is a red herring. It distracts us from the core issue, the growing number of people in our community that don't have a home, and we don't have a plan to address it. Instead, we seek to move people along, but don't provide them with a place to go. To pass this ordinance without a solid plan to truly address homelessness in Lewiston is unconscionable. Thank you.
Excuse me, please hold your applause. Thank you. Further public comment for this agenda item? Sorry, there was somebody standing behind you. But yeah, everyone can have a turn. So yeah, feel free to stand behind the podium, sir.
Hi, my name is Steve. I'm from Auburn, Maine. I deal with a lot of the homeless out there. I help feed them and everything else. I think it's totally ridiculous to pass something like this, to turn around and make them have to keep moving and everything else. I think everyone in here should be embarrassed or feel really sorry for them that they can't, if they want to try what it's like, let them go, let you guys and everybody else go out in the streets. Try it for one night, what they're going through. Guarantee you're not going to like it. It's horrible. I got friends that live up in Walmart that are sleeping in cars, 70, 80 years old. It's sickening. Yeah, we're bringing other people in from the countries and giving them homes and helping them out and everything else. Why not help the people that are here? There's plenty of mills that are open and everything else. There's something definitely wrong with this picture. We started off with a Pledge of Allegiance. What happens to the part? Justice for all. That's all I have to say.
My name is Chris Bicknell. I'm Executive Director of New Beginnings here in Lewiston. I'm here speaking against this change in ordinance. I urge you strongly to vote no to this harmful and unnecessary ordinance that will do nothing to resolve the issues of homelessness in Lewiston. The ordinance will effectively criminalize unhoused people who are suffering from the lack of social supports. The solution to homelessness is affordable housing. The solution to the social issues that lead to homelessness are supportive services connected to that housing. Every day of the year, in all kinds of weather, we help young people ages 19 through 22 who are too old for our emergency shelter and are sleeping out or living wherever they can, including abandoned buildings and vehicles in parking lots, in the woods, under highways, overpasses, and other places that would fall under the umbrella of this new ordinance, where they are often subject to exploitation, exposure-related health problems, robbery, and assault. We offer them food, survival supplies, and warm, safe places to come in off the streets at our drop-in. But at the end of the day, there isn't an adult shelter here that will welcome them to stay overnight. In the absence of a public, secular, or municipally supported shelter in either Lewiston or Auburn, many unhoused neighbors and community members find themselves with no other option but to camp or otherwise live outdoors, wherever and however they can. Again, this additional ordinance is unnecessary. If people who are camping are vandalizing property or engaging in other criminal activities, there are already other existing legal resources to deal with that. Expanding this ordinance to criminalize simply existing overnight outdoors only serves to further harm some of our most vulnerable neighbors who need housing and community supports. Making the police arrest or cite peaceful, unhoused people who are doing nothing more than trying to survive is not a good use of city resources, and further strains the limited resources available to people experiencing homelessness. Please have compassion for those who are struggling without stable housing and work towards more support for unhoused people, youth, and families, rather than create more barriers to success by introducing these folks to the criminal justice system. Please vote no. And I have to say, at this time of year, I feel compelled to quote Dickens. Are there no workhouses? Are there no prisons? Where is the compassion in this ordinance? Dig deep into your souls and in your hearts and think about what we're doing here. This community can do better. The people of this community deserve better. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Nicole Sparlin. I live on Ware Street in Lewiston. As a Lewiston resident, I think our community should consider what hurts our city's reputation more: witnessing the visible effects of homelessness in our city, or knowing that we will continue to fall short in getting unhoused and housing insecure individuals and families the shelter and warmth that they need. No one should be without adequate shelter and heat, and yet we know that a record number of Mainers this year will be without both this winter. The emergency is already here for them, yet we respond with a proposed ordinance to ban their presence on publicly owned property between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. because it makes us uncomfortable. But where else are they supposed to go when we do not have enough adult low-barrier beds available in our area? Unhoused people attempting to take shelter on public property is not the primary issue. The fact that they are driven to do so is. The point of this ordinance appears to be making the visibly unhoused increasingly invisible to the public as we continue to fail them with policy. Lewiston needs to focus on increasing the number of low-barrier adult shelter beds and other alternatives. We need to listen to the needs of those who are unhoused or at risk of being unhoused, and finally rise to the occasion. Homelessness is a complex and expensive issue, and I don't pretend to be an expert. But that doesn't mean that this is an impossible problem to solve. It means that we need to work harder. I ask that the City Council not support this proposed ordinance. Instead, let's focus our resources on sheltering and warming a growing number of visibly and invisibly unhoused Mainers this winter. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Randy, and I am currently homeless right now, and I want to talk about this ordinance. This is in response to the new city ordinance that wants to be passed about keeping the homeless out of public areas. That means if they're caught, they'll be given a summons to court for trespassing, and if they fail to appear, they'll be arrested and pay a fine for failure to appear and a fine for trespassing. Why do you want to criminalize somebody for being homeless? You guys have been talking for almost a year now about building a shelter. That's all you guys do is seem to talk. You had a woman about a year ago talking about an American veteran who said that he died on your streets. And now you want to criminalize people for being homeless? That is absolutely disgusting. I found out from a source that a lot of you live in nice rural areas where you don't have to see this every day, only when you come to work. Then you get to go home to your nice house and your spouse. You get to go home with a guaranteed roof over your head, a meal in your stomach, and a nice comfortable bed to sleep on. How could you sit there at the last meeting and vote yes without thinking twice about us, the invisible people? Every one of you but one council member voted yes. A lot of you stereotype the homeless as being on drugs or alcoholics. A lot of them are just people who are working but can't afford a place to live. They can't save up because they have to spend money they make just to survive outside. And you people just come to work every day, or a lot of you, I should say, not think twice about those who are down and out. And in my opinion, I feel that because you have nice careers, you have a nice house, a nice car to drive, etc., it puts you so far out of touch of reality that you can't see what's most needed in the city that you represent or supposed to represent. I took a picture of this guy this morning who has a prosthetic leg standing on the corner of Sabattis and Main Street this morning holding a sign. And let me tell you folks, for about 20 minutes, I was an emotional friggin' wreck. How many more winters is it going to take before you say yes and get the final say to okay to build a shelter? But most importantly, how many deaths is it going to take? How many more deaths, especially our veterans, but deaths in general? So just remember, every time you go home, and when it's cold out, when there's more deaths that happen to the homeless, the blood is going to be on your hands. So if all you want to do is sit there and talk about doing something, remember, there's going to be another person dying out there. Remember this last thing. I'm not speaking just for myself. I'm being a voice for those who are too scared to speak up and who you think are invisible. Remember that when you guys go home tonight to your nice, warm beds.
Ron Potvin, 291 Pond Road, Vice President of the store next door. Our local effort to take care of our homeless students in the school system here in Lewiston. Certainly, just at face value, seeing this ordinance, my immediate concern is that these very people that you're talking about banning are these very students. And I question the disruption that's going to take place. It's already hard enough with them living the way they are to keep them in school, of which we've had a lot of progress with it. But then we're going to throw this curveball at them where they got to keep moving or make their struggle even harder. I think the whole homeless issue in Lewiston is a work in progress, a lot of work that this council has moved forward. I think it's incomplete. I think there's a lot more work to be done, a lot more work with social agencies to step forward. And I think that if you put things in perspective, I think it's unfair to put people in this situation given where the city is right now with this homeless discussion. I think that there's a process to move through, and I think the city's doing it. I just think that this particular ordinance is premature. I think it is reasonable when the time comes when there's a winter shelter in place that you're giving options that, well, okay, we don't want you a certain place because there's an option for you to go to. And we're not there yet. And I think it's reasonable to allow people to get through this. I mean, I can't fathom it, and I don't understand how they exist. When I see them come in after spending a night in 30-degree, 20-degree weather, how they keep going, but they do. So at least if they're able to keep going, and the city continues progress in establishing either sheltering or other services that can address this, and certainly there's been an amazing amount of progress that's been done this year alone, that I'm hopeful that we continue to do that. I don't think it's necessary, this ordinance. I think it can wait. I think when there are other options for them to avail themselves to, that then you can create these much stricter ordinances to keep them off the road. So I think there's just a process that needs to be played out. I think it's reasonable to work in that direction. It will help us. Certainly our main desire is to keep these kids in school, keep them learning, keep them committed, and not create more barriers for them than what already exist. Thank you.
Further public comment?
Hi, my name is Melissa Dunn. I'm a resident at 254 Blake Street in Lewiston. WGME reported this evening live, thousands of Mainers are at risk of losing temporary housing due to the ending of the pandemic relief. Tomorrow is December 21st. It makes the longest night of the year. Organizations across the nation hold events to highlight homelessness. And today is the day that there's going to be discussion to pass an ordinance that displaces people from community. Ordinances should not be created to displace people. The messaging around here has been around fear-mongering. I haven't really seen facts just to instill a fear, because the sight of a homeless person is more offensive than being forced to be homeless. There's been other ordinances around anti-homeless efforts before, and certain small businesses were able to get benches removed and smoking bans in place in those efforts, changing the entire dynamics of communities and blocks. The reality is homeless people are victims more often than not. They've experienced threats, harm, violence, exploitation, even documented threats of a baseball bat. Being trauma-informed and recognizing equity, diversity, and inclusion, it's important to understand the importance of minimizing interaction with the Lewiston, Maine Police Department. Ordinances like this only disproportionately impact the poorest in our community, and it risks being pushed underground into dangerous circumstances and territory out of survival. It risks people to be at greater risk of being exploited by people. We would literally be forcing people into survival sex for housing or for shelter or for respite, potentially forcing people into situations that they're trying to flee from, like domestic violence, psychosexual abuse, substance use even. We don't need police to resolve issues of homelessness. We can resolve the issues with community on our own. We can resolve community issues without the police, and we can do so through transformative and healing justice, but we need community. Thank you.
Further public comment on this agenda item?
Hi, everybody. My name is Rosie Boyce. I live at 294 Pine Street here in Lewiston. Prior to the last speaker mentioning the vigil tomorrow night, by a show of hands, how many council members knew that existed? And it was still put on the agenda to vote to make homelessness illegal in Lewiston the night before the national annual homelessness vigil happens. That vigil happens because it is the longest, and in Maine especially, one of the coldest nights of the year, especially to be outside. Now, I will say I'm a person in long-term recovery. I have been homeless. I have 14 years clean and sober from IV heroin addiction, and I work with at-risk populations today. And of all the things that is wrong with Lewiston, Homelessness is not one of them. We have a homelessness issue, but that is a secondary problem. The underlying issues that cause homelessness are the things that this committee and others like it need to be focusing on. I was at eviction court on November 9th. There were 87 families, 87 individual families at risk of homelessness on November 9th. Tomorrow is the next eviction hearing date. We'll see what happens with most of them, but if this ordinance passes tonight, what will happen to those 87 families if they're all evicted? We don't have sufficient shelter space. We don't have a warming center. Weather in Maine is cold. We have negative, below negative, subarctic temperatures more often than we don't, with wind chills coming up to negative 19 is what my thermometer said a few nights ago with the wind chill. I've asked several times why Lewiston can't come up with an adequate, non-religious, low-barrier emergency shelter to handle the overflow of homeless families in Lewiston. And I've been told several times that the city council has said, well, we couldn't staff it. And we know that that's not true. We saw during COVID that the community in Lewiston came together almost overnight and from the ground up put together a program and staffed a low-barrier emergency shelter to get homeless people off the street to stop the transmission of COVID. But we can't seem to come together long enough to find an amicable solution for these people. After millions of ARPA dollars were squandered, we had an opportunity to do exactly that, and it wasn't done. And that is very, very, is heartbreaking to me and so many others. I hope no one dies tonight or tomorrow night or the night after that as a result, of, I pray that you all vote no. There are better solutions. This is not a solution. Thank you.
Further public comment? Public comment is now. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Johnny Clark, the founder, co-owner, and executive director of A Hand Up Sober Living. And I just want to say I agree with what everyone said so far. And I think that like we're just kind of moving the problem along instead of addressing the problem. And there's a wide range of problems, but they can be addressed. Substance use disorder. Some people work hard and just can't afford it. People with mental health challenges. There's just all these different reasons why we should be providing them with an alternative, you know? And as far as staffing goes, I have 50 beds in Augusta and Lewiston, and I welcome any of you guys to come over and meet some of the guys we have at these houses. We have people in long-term recovery that would be more than willing to staff a shelter if it was provided. So, thanks.
Anybody else for public comment? Public comment is now closed. And we're back to the council for discussion. Yes, thank you for everyone who spoke tonight. I hear you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I had concerns with this ordinance at the first passage, and while I appreciate administration's and the attorney's work, I do feel that the language that's presented tonight is overly broad. And yeah, I urge the council to vote this down. This is not what we need. I'm also concerned that you know, all of our recent actions, you know, taken together, we had we provided a security contract for the garage that was really centered on the homelessness and the homelessness issue in the city garages. And then with this, I'm concerned that we're leaning a lot towards enforcement, and we really need to provide solutions to people. And I'm sorry, but this is not a solution for our city. Further discussion. Councillor Jelanis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I voted in support of the first reading, and from a certain lens, I could understand why this was being proposed. We talked about it, and I was able to get my head wrapped around it, but I've given this a lot of thought since that first reading, and I can say that if we had a plan in place, or enough of a plan just to unwrap, in the very near future, I think I might be able to get behind this ordinance. But the reality of our homeless situation in Lewiston is not good. This ordinance does not feel like a solution for me. In fact, it feels like we're adding a bigger problem to one that already exists, especially when I think about our youth, who I work with day in and day out. It feels like we're moving people from point A to point B to point C with nowhere for them to go and not enough provisions. I know that we had talked about, when we, I have a business myself, and there was an encampment set up right nearby. And, we went to work with the unhoused there and presented them with some options. I think that I want to make sure that, I say there is some good work being done. There has been some good work being done. I want to acknowledge that. But I would echo, what Mr. Potvin said. We're not there yet. I think as Lewiston leaders, we need to do better. We need to come up with a solution. And I think most importantly, in the absence of a municipally supported shelter, I cannot vote in favor of this ordinance tonight.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you. So first off, I want to apologize. I was not at the last meeting. I've been sick, unfortunately. I'm feeling a bit better, and I'm here tonight. I will tell you that when I first read this, my first thought was, I'm going to talk about a little bit of stuff, and I hope you give me a little bit of leeway here because I wasn't here last week. So we as counselors get phone calls. We get phone calls from constituents. We get phone calls from businesses. We get phone calls from many, many people. Some of the phone calls we get are from businesses that are downtown and that have to deal with a homeless situation, have to pick up stuff in front of their doors every day. So now I'm thinking, what do I do as a counselor and answer that? How do I help this business not decide to leave because there's a situation that they have to deal with every day? And at the same time have a heart and be at that vigil, which I will be at tomorrow night, and I've been at every year since it's happened. Have a heart to help the people that need the help that we need. I also have to think about my ward. My ward has Sunnyside Park. My ward, prior to me even being a city councilor, I have lived in that neighborhood for 21 years. And for nearly 21 years, I and others in that community and that neighborhood have gone to that park and done cleanup every spring and tried to help the people that live in that park and live in those woods. And it has grown every single year. And every year that it grows, it becomes more and more not only a danger for the people that are homeless, but a danger for the people in the neighborhoods. There are makeshift fire pits set up. There are people, excuse my language, but defecating. It is unsanitary, it's unsafe. It's unsafe for the homeless, and it's unsafe for the people in that neighborhood. So as a counselor, I have to weigh all of this at the same time. And I have to try to answer to those people that live in that neighborhood and that have lived there for generations and say that I'm scared because people are coming into my yard and taking stuff from my yard. I got to answer to businesses that have been here for generations that are concerned about their business. But I also got to be worried too, because I see the homeless people. I'm an educator by trade. I work with children. I know what these children need. And I'm going to tell you something personally. My daughter and my 2 grandchildren are living at my house right now. I won't go into details, but they don't have any place else to live. And I get very concerned about what I see. And I walk out in this park and I see a young man sitting out there who is not from out of state or anywhere else. He's a young man about my son's age, who's 21, who has no place to go. And I ask him, I say, "Are you okay? Do you have some place to go?" And he says, "I'm waiting for my cousin to bring me a sleeping bag so I have some warmth tonight." And it breaks my heart. So this is very difficult. I can understand, and I will be very frank with you, when our police department has to say that you cannot be sitting in front of this business and sleeping here. But we don't have a place to send them when the police do that. So what do we do? I was very concerned when I read this the last time, and like I said, I apologize for not being able to be here. I was concerned that we would be closing the parks down 100%, and I understand the dangers there. I understand the dangers to our community. I understand what the police and our public works have had to remove from there, but we have no other option. And here's the crux of it. We're not alone. I'm going to put this right out there. What is Auburn doing? Auburn won't even have the discussion to have zoning to have a homeless shelter. I'm kind of disgusted with all of it, to be honest with you, and I want to do something. I don't know what we're going to do, but I will tell you right now, I'm not comfortable voting for this ordinance. I will be voting no, and I will work every day that I can to find a way to think outside the box, because that's what we have to do. We have to figure this out. We have to pull people together. We have to figure out what we're going to do. We cannot expect it to be off of the backs of taxpayers, because there are people like me that live paycheck to paycheck, that have family living with them, that I can't afford more stuff. But I'm willing to go out there. I'll go out there every day with a cup of coffee and help whoever I can and work with whoever I can in this community. But we need to all do it together. And we need to figure something out, because it is getting colder and it is getting worse. And the reality is that no matter what is done by any municipality in this state, the situation is not going to go away by more laws and more ignoring of it. It's going to grow. It's continuing to grow. It's growing across our country. And if we're elected to do something, we need to do something. And I'm going to do something, and I'm voting no on this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So while I appreciate the changes that were made from the first reading, I still think this is overly broad, and I also had a few questions about some of the language here. So does this include, I don't know if this would be for administration or police chief, does this include streets and sidewalks as well as parks and other public parcels?
So yes, the ordinance would, in fact, include all city-owned property or property that's maintained by the city.
So that includes benches downtown, sidewalks?
Correct, yeah, any public property or that's owned or maintained by the city of Lewiston.
And also people sleeping in their cars on public streets, public parking?
Correct.
And it would also include the family who was on the front page of the paper on Sunday, living in the school bus at the boat launch?
Yes, that has the same curfew hours.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't see, if this is being done in the name of public safety, I just don't see this as being an improvement. I mean, the mere presence of someone who is unhoused is not a safety issue. But if we start pushing them out of the more visible places into less visible places, they're going to be more at risk of being victimized. They're going to be less safe than if they were in the places that they found already. So I just don't see how I could enforce this, or how I could support this as written. Thank you.
Further discussion from the council? Councilor Clement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have gone over this and gone over it. I have a couple of questions for Chief St. Pierre, if we might. Having been in this business, I recognize this not as a cleanup measure, but as a tool to give our police something that they can act on when the situation arises that requires it. I don't envision our police department going out there and checking every car in every parking lot or kicking everybody along. But we have merchants, as Councilor Scott so accurately brought up, that have communicated to us the different things that have happened in front of their businesses, the waste, the filth, the needles. And there's nothing save their acquiescence into having the police move them along that can be done for them. I don't see this as being some kind of a campaign to go against people. I don't think anybody on this dais is against homeless people. I think we've made some valiant efforts this year to address the problem. No, we're not there yet, but we're ahead of some communities that I know of, and I just won't go into that any further. There was an article in today's paper that indicates that. But I think we need to give our police, they have prosecutorial discretion. I think they need to have the availability of some of these tools in order to address the situations. The Sunnyside Park issue this year, we had residents of that neighborhood that were driven out of that neighborhood by residents, the illegal encampment. They were threatened by people. I think of another area in town, I think it was published in the paper here recently, there's a two-story treehouse. That happens to be, I believe, private property, but I also think the property owner was not aware that people were camping on his property. It is an absolute dump in there. And I'm sure that there's human waste and all kinds of other things in there. We have to be able to address situations as they arise. I think we have discretion. I think police in northern New England tend to have more discretion than they do in other areas of the country. I don't think there's anybody on our police department that's out to batter or go after homeless people for any reason. I think if we give them the proper tools, they will use good judgment and utilize it as intended, just a tool to address certain situations. You cannot prepare for the atom bomb. You cannot enact an ordinance that will cover every single situation. By the same token, if you don't enact some ordinances, I know, for instance, now the police will go along, somebody's camped out in the doorway, let's say the business owner has not given written permission, and you find things like human waste in that doorway, police say, you gotta move along, and they're challenged. They're challenged to the point where sometimes they end up getting arrested for things other than encampments or whatever. But I do believe we need to provide our police with reasonable tools to handle these situations. I don't know how my colleagues feel about it. I do appreciate the changes in the ordinance. I think it was a little bit broad when initially presented. I really don't have a problem with the way it's worded because I know our police chief, and I know they're reasonable people. I don't think they're going to be looking at this as an invitation to go out and wage war on anybody. So for that very reason, I'm contemplating very heavily voting yes on this ordinance tonight, and I thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, am extremely torn. I listen to our esteemed councilor from Ward 1 and Ward 6, and I'm caught right in the middle. I think the city of Lewiston has done a real good job mapping out, getting a roadmap to addressing the homeless situation in Lewiston, passing an ordinance. I'm frustrated that they pushed for a homeless shelter and those same people are no longer here to build a homeless shelter. We currently have approximately 85 beds in the city of Lewiston. There's no other community abutting us that has that many. We approved up to 125 beds. There's no other community around here that does that. We've given unlimited homeless shelters for the families. There's no other community around here that's stepped up that's willing to do that. Lewiston has worked, and we're continuing to work. I agree there's more work to be done, but we need help. We need help from the state. We need help from the county. We need help from the surrounding communities. We asked our state representatives for it. Lewiston cannot foot the bill for the entire state of Maine. We cannot foot the bill for the entire Androscoggin County. I'm torn. I agree that there is a drastic need. There's a need to address how somebody became homeless. There's a massive lack of support for mental health and drug addiction in our state. It's a massive lack. We need help in that area. We accomplish that, we will knock down homelessness hardcore in our community. This is, and I agree with Councilor Clement, this is just a tool that the police department has in their tool belt. I mentioned at a council meeting that if you're going 26 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone, technically you can get pulled over and get given it and be issued a citation for speeding. Do they do that? No. Will they do that? No. This is another tool that helps moves people along, that we do not have a downtown that has all the sidewalks filled with tents, like if you go to some of the other big cities in the country. That's what happened to that business that's paying that mortgage, that has that family, that's supporting how many other families. They're trying to make a living also. They have a right to make a living without having a tent city in front of their business that prevents any customers from coming in, that blocks their entrances. This just gives the police department the opportunity to move them along so they're not blocking their entrances. I'm torn. I agree. But I think we've stepped up, we've opened up the laws, we've made the laws, we said, okay, let's do it, let's build it. We're not seeing anybody stepping up. We're not seeing anybody stepping up. Where was the group that a year ago chastised us so unfairly? They're not here. Where did they go? The money's still there. Where did they go? I tend to agree with Councilor Clement. We have to address both issues. Right now, this is just a tool that we can help the police department and help some of our businesses and help some of our landowners. I constantly get calls from people right across from Adams Avenue, the encampment that's there. We can name them all around the city. They're everywhere. And we're no different than any other community. In the newspaper this morning, it says we do not have a higher homeless population than we did pre-COVID. It's about the same right now. So it's not growing. It just seems to be coming to a town near us, obviously Lewiston, because we're a service center. And it's recognized, we're recognizing it. There are still some open beds and some shelters here in town. People choose not to use it, and that's their choice. I choose to run a business. I should have that choice also, being free of somebody putting a tent up in front of my business and preventing my customers from coming in and out. So I tend to lean with Councilor Clement. I'm in favor of this, just to give that as a tool. And I would like, if this passes, I would like a report back from the police department within a month to see how this is going, to see how many encounters we've had, how is it handling, how is it going? We gave 32 tickets for people speeding 26 miles an hour. I don't expect that to happen with the homeless situation either. Thank you.
Councilor Peace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm torn on this as well. My issue is I had a couple things. One is the way it was written. It was 9 to 5 a.m. That's probably all right in the wintertime. In the summertime, I'd like to see probably 11 to 5, giving the people that are out late at night a chance, a place to go, enjoy. I also look at it as the tool for the police department. If we don't have something to have them checking on these people, moving them along, how are we going to know whether they're safe or not? If they approach them and they see they're unresponsive or they're having an issue, they can help give them aid. If they just let them sit there and do nothing, don't bother them, drive along, yeah, that person may die because they weren't approached. And we can't expect the police department to approach everybody, every time, all the time. So we have to give them the discretion and the ability to do this. It's like I said, I don't want to help, or I should say hinder, the homeless from having a place to go or a place to stay. I'd love to be able to put them up anywhere, you know. I fought for them many times. I'm working with the store next door, trying to find places for the homeless students. They do a great job, but they have to have tools, they have to have guidelines that they have to follow, and it makes it tough for them. If the police department doesn't have guidelines and guidelines to follow, it's going to be even tougher for them. It's going to be tougher for them, it's going to be tougher for the store owner, the property owner. They have no recourse. So I feel by doing this, at least it gives them the ability to have some recourse. Thank you.
Thank you, councilors. You know, I would argue that our police currently have tools and they've used them. You know, for instance, we had the sunny sign encampment, and it has been removed and cleaned up, all without the benefit of this ordinance. You know, pitching a tent in front of someone's business will certainly elicit a police response, and they'll get them to remove the tent. You know, we had a tent pitched on the other side of Park Street, and I notified the police, and it was taken care of a little while later. You know, if businesses, if people are obstructing the sidewalk, there are already laws to prevent that. I feel that at this point in time, yes, I agree with the people who've already said it's overly broad and just kind of borders on the punitive at this point. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a tough situation. I think the chief proposed, I think you were the one that proposed this, weren't you?
Yes, I did. You know, under the law enforcement, you know, as the chief of police, my primary responsibility is the safety of everyone. I don't believe it's safe for the unhoused to be sleeping in the middle of the woods. They're included in that. Not only are the people that Councilor Scott talked about that complain about them, they're included in those that I'm actually trying to protect. It's not safe to be out there in a tent in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, sometimes alone, sometimes with somebody else. That's my concern. That's one of my major concerns. And I think we've been treating it in a very humanitarian way in that we're getting them or offering them resources whatever we can. Do I think there's enough resources out there? Absolutely not. I do not think that. I think we can do better with that. But you know, I need to protect them just as well as, you know, answer everybody's complaints as well.
Thank you. The reality is this new section is just clarification of what's above. It's to make it clear what the beginning of this ordinance, the intention of the beginning of this ordinance. Isn't that correct?
Right. It falls in line with all of the other parks that are in town that already have the 9 to 5 you know, prohibition that they can't be, the curfew, if you will, I guess, from 9 to 5 that they cannot be in it. It's just going to also provide other areas where people recreate as well as sidewalks and such.
Okay, thank you. I think that's one of the things that wasn't clear is the fact that the intent of this ordinance is already there, and this is just clarification of the intent of that ordinance, so it's not ambiguous, and people understand it better. The homeless in the city is a tough situation. I know I've been on a group trying to find a spot, just open up a warming shelter, and looking at all our options in the city, and we weren't able to find something at this point in time. I don't know what the answer is. I think the ordinance is needed. How it is enforced would be up to the individual situations. I don't know if it would be smart to delay the implementation of this for a few months. You know, have a motion and have it implement March 30th of next year, something like that. It would give a few months for people to understand what they're going to be facing, and it would get us through winter. And I don't know if that's an option, but Administrator Hunter, what's your thoughts on that?
We can certainly investigate that. I will also mention the ordinances typically don't go into effect till 30 days after passage. And I'll refer to Madam Clerk, that if they set a specific effective date, that is permissible as well. But at the earliest, it would be 30 days from when it passes.
Okay. Well, at this time, I'd like to make a motion that the ordinance, if it's voted forward, will be implemented as of April 1st of 2023.
Is there, Councilor Pizza seconded that motion? Discussion on this motion, and I'll start. So, yeah, this is a bad idea now, and it will also be a bad idea on April 1st. Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask the chief how he envisions this ordinance, how he wants his people to work with this ordinance. I just assume that you're not going to tell people, go forth and enforce this new ordinance.
Right, I've never said that, and I never will. This ordinance gives us a little bit more teeth to move people along that may be performing very unsavory behavior. We are not going to walk up to somebody that's unhoused and say anything but hello if they're not creating a problem or an issue, or there's no valid complaints about what they're doing, being illegal and such. The intent is not to criminalize anything, but it's to give us a little bit more power that we can move people along, try to find them a safe place. We do so with compassion. We have a program that's called PSY. We have an options program. We utilize these every single day to try to get people that need assistance, the assistance that they need. That's not only the unhoused, that's people that are suffering from substance use disorder and many other issues that they may be facing. We have homeless shelters here. Perhaps not enough, I don't know, but we're working on a lot of issues currently now. We're looking at the implementation of a housing navigator coming up in the near future, maybe a little bit more assistance with general assistance, maybe another assistant or two. I'm not sure. I'm told the city's looking into those options. Again, we have discretion, and I can assure you, and I don't know if anybody's going to tell you that the mean, evil police are really being mean and evil to them on a daily basis. When I went to the homeless encampments at Sunnyside Park, I actually went to that myself at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I got more thank yous for the way we handled those people than I got backlash. We met with them. Our PSY workers had a path worker with them at the time. We got all of their names, set them up for another interview with the PSY worker to see what we can do to get them assistance. Now, like I said, is there more we can do? I think there is. But this just provides us with a tool to keep them safe.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I would just remind everybody here tonight that we are one of 4 municipalities in the state of Maine that have an internationally accredited police department, has been for over 25 years. Comments from the chair tonight have not been appreciated, and I will address those later on, okay? But I just don't envision it as being a problem. I see it as a tool. I have full faith and confidence in Chief St. Pierre and his people. They have discretion. They use discretion. I think they perform admirably in most situations. And I just don't appreciate some of the comments that have come down so far tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. Regarding the discretion and the enforcement piece, are there not already ordinances in place to address if someone's doing something unsafe or illegal that would already be there that you wouldn't need this for?
There are some laws. There's laws such as disorderly conduct. There's laws such as obstructing a public way. Yes, there certainly is. This might be more, to take effect to, on sidewalks where maybe somebody just generally wouldn't pass but might pass, whether there's, as Councilor Scott said, defecation, there's other issues that we need to move those people along. We're not looking, again, to bring people to jail. That's our last thing that we do. Last effort that we're going to do is take somebody to jail. We don't want to further set them back in their homelessness. That's not our goal or our intent. But I think with a little bit of trust and a little bit of, knowing that we're going to have discretion. I can't tell you what each individual officer is going to have, but I can tell you what I'm going to direct them to do. And it's not going to be to just move people along at will because they may look unsavory or they're, for whatever reason. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. And then I had another question about, so I see that this big chunk of language has been added about getting permission to use public property from the city administrator. And I was just wondering what that process would look like. Does someone need to apply on a daily basis, or is it, can they get a permit for a certain length of time? And what sort of situation would a permit be granted or not granted?
Based upon the ordinance being passed, an SOP would need to be developed. I would view this similar to other events or city use of property that we currently have and mirror the SOP that we have in place and use that as the model.
So would you envision that only being granted for groups and such holding events, or would individuals be able to apply and say I need to sleep here?
I think it would be a case-by-case basis. I think the other piece that the city would need to consider is any liability as well. So any policy that would need to be developed would have to be run by not only the city attorney, but also the city's insurance company.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you. Since you brought up liability, does this open up our door if now we're acknowledging there are people that are sleeping on the city property, what kind of liability are we exposing ourselves to if somebody got hurt, if one of the tents caught fire and some tragic thing happened? Does that open the city to liability?
I think each circumstance is going to be unique and investigated. I will say, generally speaking, we're covered under the Maine tort law, so that will provide some level of protection as well.
Because like if the balloon festival is set up in the Maine Park, they have to have insurance and they have to be fully covered, and they're there for an extended amount of time. And now we're saying, okay, anybody can stay any place. I just feel it does open us up to a liability situation.
That's why I would have the SOP reviewed by the city, the insurance cover carrier.
Thank you. And Chief, when you were down at Sunnyside Park, and I've heard nothing but good things about your officers and your department in dismantling that encampment. I know there are many meetings. How many people took advantage of the services that were provided to them?
There was certainly less than I had hoped. Out of all of them, if I had to guess a number, I don't remember the exact number, but I'd say probably 70% did not follow through with a secondary meeting with our PSY worker.
Okay, thank you. As far as in addressing specifically the motion on the table, I think we can, I have full faith in our police department that they have the ability to discern when to enact and when to walk by, like the 26 miles an hour. I have faith in our department, and they're a great police department. They're very, very professional, and I would not go along with the delay at this point. We can pass it and ask that the police department take the next month or so just informing them before we start doing stuff. Say, hey guys, gals, whatever, this is coming. And we can move the delay that way, but I'm not in favor of delaying it at this point.
And just to be clear, the police are not on trial here. Chief, you and your agency have done admirably well, and yes, you handled the camps with compassion and with professionalism, and I appreciate that. What we're talking about here is an ordinance that is just simply too broad, and the police are tasked with enforcing ordinances. When Chief, I would like to ask you a question. So, under this ordinance, if it was in fact tonight, there could be somebody sleeping on a Lisbon Street bench at 2 a.m., what would happen then?
Most likely, they would just be asked to leave. Simply that. Our last course of effort, our last thing that we do is want to arrest anybody. We don't even want to summons people. If that's a last-ditch effort. If people are just being non-compliant, I can tell you that my instructions to my men and women of the Lewiston Police Department are, when dealing with the unhoused, we don't want to set them further back in their being unhoused. So we need to give them a lot of leeway. We probably give 8 or 10 warnings before we actually take action by giving a physical summons or making a physical arrest.
No, and I appreciate that, but my point remains. At 2 a.m., this person will be asked to leave, and then where exactly will they go? There is no place.
Another place you can kick them out.
Please, public comment is over. Thank you. Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I just want to make a point of saying that, I have a great deal of respect for the Lewiston Police Department, and I especially appreciate the work that PSY has been doing and continues to do. My reason for not supporting this isn't because I don't have complete trust or faith. My reason for not supporting this is because there simply are no resources. In the absence of provision, in the absence of resources, I can't put my vote behind this ordinance. It has nothing to do with my faith with the police. Thank you.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. I have no doubt what the police department does for our community. I have great admiration for the work that you do. But that being said, I cannot support delaying this, nor voting for it, nor supporting it until we have more things in place for our homeless community. We don't even have a warming shelter for them to go. They go to the library, they go to other places. It's freezing out there. In my heart of hearts, no matter what's being said here, I cannot support this at this time. I just cannot.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I would support the motion on the table to amend this and would vote in the affirmative of that, as opposed to the main motion that was originally introduced. Contrary to what has been said here tonight, I don't think it's a bad idea. So I will just leave it at that. If we move the amendment forward, I'm in favor of and will vote in the affirmative on that. I'm not sure that I would do the same for the main body of the motion, however. I'm still torn on that, but I think we need to give our police something to work with. I don't view this as overly broad. I don't view it as unnecessary. I suspect I have a little more experience in this area than some people that have spoken tonight, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make it clear that my motion is, if this ordinance is passed, it will go into effect April 1st. So you can support the delay and not support the main motion, but I just want to make it clear that it's only if the original motion passes will the delay take effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Clement. Councilor Clement.
Question, Mr. Mayor. I don't know that we can proceed that way. I would ask the wisdom of Madam Clerk as to whether we can do it in that fashion, or do we have to amend the main motion and vote on the amendment in order for that to happen?
Madam Clerk, it's my understanding that we would vote to add this amendment to the main motion and then vote on the main motion, but can you please clarify?
Yes, that would be correct, Mr. Mayor, that this would be an amendment to the existing because it was brought up under the discussion of the current main motion.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can you please repeat the motion on the table?
Sure, absolutely. And also, if I could get some clarification, I did miss who seconded the motion.
I believe it was Councilor Pease.
Great, thank you, Counselor, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the motion is, if the ordinance is approved, that the effective date of the ordinance would be April 1st, 2023.
Unless there's further discussion, I would like to vote on the current motion. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
No.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
No.
Ward 1?
No.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 to 3. So now that language is now incorporated.
Into the
Yes,
main
sir.
motion.
Thank you.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I was just thinking earlier that with all the, all the stonewalling that this council has put in place to try to stop any sort of shelters happening or do anything to help the homeless, it just seems really offensive to me to pass something like this, especially where there's, we're at the same place basically that we were at the beginning of the year. There's nothing in place for people to go to. There aren't enough resources for people, and to do nothing to help that and then do something that will certainly harm people, again, is just offensive to me. Thanks.
I would like to add to that if this council had wanted a temporary winter shelter, we would have had one by now. Further comments from the council before we vote on this? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Sure, Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
No.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
No.
Ward 1?
No.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 to 3.
Madam Clerk, thank you. Agenda item number 3.
Item number 3, resolve, accepting and appropriating funds received by the city's direct participation in the class action lawsuit against the pharmaceutical companies who manufactured and distributed opioid addicting medications and drugs. Requested action to approve the resolve accepting and appropriating funds received from the city's direct participation in the class action lawsuit against the pharmaceutical companies who manufactured and distributed opioid addicting medications and drugs.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor Harriman, seconded by Councilor Pease. Discussion from the council? Councilor LaChapelle?
Yes. Can you just clarify a little bit? I'm looking at vehicle and radio, $65,000, gas line, $3,500, contractual services, shift differential, $2,500. I'm fine in those two. Just what kind of vehicle? And it says in a previous page we're purchasing a used vehicle for $65,000 and a radio. I imagine the radio's $3-4 grand.
Actually, the radio, it includes two components, the radio in the car as well as a portable. So there's two components to the radio. We are unclear about the used car inventory right now, given what we experienced when we were purchasing the cruisers and the unmarked vehicles earlier this year. So it gives a cushion, recognizing that any vehicle that is purchased would go before the Finance Committee for approval as well. So this provides just, a cushion there to be able to explore various vehicle options to see what's available, what's the most economical for this purpose, as well as secure the two radios. Anything that is surplus will get rolled back in to being reappropriated.
I just know we can buy Hyundais for $35,000, $40,000 brand new. And it just seems for used vehicles, $65,000, I have a hard time swallowing spending that kind of money for a used vehicle. Where has, to date, it looks like $131,000 something to that effect. Where's that money been spent thus far?
Nothing's been spent. This is this order is accepting and appropriating this money for the first time.
For the first time?
For the first
So
time.
it's sitting in its own little bank?
We have received the first payment of $61,022. We anticipate within the next month or so receiving the second payment of the $69,081.07. So we just received that. It went before the Substance Use Ad hoc Committee to make a recommendation. This is the recommendation that they have put forward so far, and now council needs to accept and appropriate it.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to speak with the chief today in regards to this, and at first I was very concerned. I wasn't in favor of a vehicle at all. I said, well, we can hire another person to work with them. Remember, we went back and we added in, I'm speaking to the council, they had one full-timer and a part-timer, and we gave them more money so they could go with 2 full-time positions. Undoubtedly, that other full-time position is not filled. They're having a hard time finding somebody to work that second shift, so that's why I think the shift differential is in there. And it still comes back to the same situation. We can have all our counselors and everybody say, well, let's try to get you help. If there's no help to be found, you can't tell them where to go, which we know there's no place that you can bring somebody for substance abuse right now. They're all full. Mental health issues. I'm dealing with somebody right now that there's no place to bring and we're in a difficult situation. I'm in favor of this. I would just like to lower that dollar amount for the vehicle. And if a radio 10 grand for the whole setup?
The estimate was between 10 and 12, yes.
10, 12 grand?
Yes.
I know I was over at Fordland, and they got some Hondas over there that are just new that are less than that.
If I may, Counselor.
You're in control of the meeting, sir, right now.
No, well, the way I read this is up to 65.
I don't want to spend up to 65 for a vehicle. That's the problem.
Right. No, I understand. But Administrator Hunter, you will find find the best vehicle for the job, and then find that vehicle at the cheapest possible price. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's typically how we approach things.
For 65, I'll sell you my wife's 2020 Jeep. 65,000, Grand Cherokee, not a problem. It'd be here tomorrow.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the dollar amount, the vehicle. I know how the city approaches these things. I understand what the intent is. I would much rather see, let me back up a bit. I would much rather this had evolved from the committee as a recommendation to the council to discuss this before we were faced with an agenda item to appropriate funds. I'm finding it hard to swallow the dollar amount here for the intended purpose. I would much rather see a third PSY worker put in place. If we can come up with a vehicle, I mean, radios, I assume now that we're talking this super duper encrypted new system that's just been put into place.
That's
why the
correct.
$10,000 to $12,000. That's unconscionable to getting that kind of money for the radio. However, I am fully in support of the PSY situation. I think we need to have somebody available 24 hours a day. And I think the way this is put forth kind of causes me a little heartburn. I think in the future, we need to hear about these things, discuss these things before they're brought for us for an appropriation. And based on that, I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on it tonight. Thank you.
Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Chief O'Malley, if you can help me with this. So I can't speak to the amount necessarily, but I can speak to my colleagues about the necessity for a vehicle. Currently, our PSY workers are riding along with other officers, and there's a lot of downtime for them when they could be at the scene somewhere else and really intervening and doing valuable work in our community. And so the need for another car really made good sense to the committee. We will be doing a presentation to the council on February 21st, I believe.
I believe so.
And, voting on a lot more. But these funds became available. I mean, this is the other reality about these funds is it's been the best kept secret, for quite a while. And then when they came, we really sort of had to make some decisions quick. So, Chief, I don't know if you'd add anything to that about the necessity for the car versus another worker?
Yeah, I certainly can, and I've spoke to some people in regards to it already. So we do have a PSY worker that works. Right now, we have 1 out of 2. She works primarily during the daytime. So what typically happens, and not to take away from, what we think is good, that they're actually riding around with the police so that we have that boots on the ground type of situation, but what happens sometimes is that PSY worker might be with beat 203, and then beat 203 gets called to an accident on Outer Sabata Street. So he has that PSY worker in his car. Then we have a need on 206 for the PSY worker, and she's with 203, so he can't leave the accident scene and bring her there. So what this would assist with is if they can respond from the station, obviously we're still going to be there to make sure that the scene, or whatever you want to call it, is safe for them to come, but they'll be able to respond from the station, meet the officer at the desired location. In addition to that, that PSY worker would be able to make a follow-up the following day. Let's say she's dealt with an individual on several occasions, and she really believes that she's safe in dealing with them. She's a trained counselor. She's counseled many people on her own before she became a PSY worker for the police department. She can take her car and go do that follow-up, so it's now not also tying up a police officer.
And so thank you for that. I mean, the amount of time that we would have available if a PSY worker had their own vehicle would be substantially increased versus, needing to hire another one when they're all riding along with other officers. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. So I too had some concerns if we were going to have another PSY person there. I was concerned if we were able to hire somebody else for that second shift. And I too had some questions about having something come before us before we had a report from the committee. Because I too would appreciate that we had a report, especially being the end of the year, at some point prior to getting the request. But I do understand that the money has just come in. And one of my questions was also, does that money also include the price of gas?
There's a separate line for the gasoline.
Okay.
And if I would, Mr. Mayor and Councilor, 2 pieces. I believe this, when the chief did a presentation on the status of the police department earlier, I believe we had mentioned the vehicle at that point in time. Regarding a third PSY worker,
Yep.
I know, speaking with Tri-County Mental Health, they have applied for a grant. So what they're looking at is if that grant could provide a third person. So we're kind of holding that money to see if that grant comes through.
I completely agree with what you were just saying in respect to if this person needs to be in certain areas at certain times, and we have a police officer that's on scene for another event, I would like them to have a vehicle that they're able to go take care of that situation. I know that the PSY workers were very helpful in what we were just discussing, and that was the encampment in Sunnyside Park, and they were there to help offer those services, and I think it's a really important service that we have in our community. So I agree, it's a little pricey, but we're also getting the settlement finally, the money that we've been waiting for, and I'm okay with it. I would be able to vote yes on this.
Councilor Ornament?
Thank you. Where we currently have 2 positions and 1 is filled. I'd love to have 3 full positions, but if we've currently got 1 empty position, it seems like it makes more sense to make the full position more effective than to open another 3rd position when we currently have an empty one. So I support this, and I didn't realize that until I heard about this that was the case with our PSY workers, that sometimes they end up stuck in places where they can't really be effective. So hopefully this will really help them out. Thank you.
Councilor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too, when I first saw this, I thought $65,000 would go a long ways to adding a third person. After hearing the chief's explanation, I fully understand where this is coming from. One question I have is this are we in a rush to spend this money?
Okay, so as far as a rush, no. But are we in a rush to increase the effectiveness of the worker we do have? Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a dynamic on why why this came to us the way it did. Yeah, I mean, I can support this. The dollar amount I can't support, but we'll have a second bite at it on finance, because that will come before the finance board, correct?
Yes.
So we'll have a second bite at this, and I'm good with it. Thank you.
Yes, and for the public's, to understand here, when there's a PSY worker stopped at a routine traffic stop, that's just not, the highest and best use of their time. And so I think it just boils down to simple efficiency. Councilor Peace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Don't we have, and I'm not sure, I don't know if to direct this to the chief or administrator, but we just bought some police vehicles recently, and don't we have a couple more that are supposed to be coming offline within a period of time?
That's very likely, yes, because we did just purchase some more. So there is that potential that we could use that, one of those cars, but the condition of them isn't the best after they're used on a regular basis for the duration of their lifetime. These are vehicles that are used 24/7, every single day of the year. They're not driven, by an elderly person. They're driven by a police officer responding to a call, if that makes any sense. So, though I have my officers driving with all due diligence.
Thank you for that clarification, Chief. I deeply appreciate that.
Yeah, at times those vehicles are more of a burden to keep up the maintenance.
Okay, I was just curious because I was going to say, if we can take these dollars and buy a new cruiser,
yeah,
turn one of these
so
out.
Maybe if I can clarify a little bit too, I understand the money value is $65,000, is that correct, Administrator Hunter? So out of that also includes the police radio. So I looked into it today a little bit further, and the actual police radio that's mounted inside the car that is comparable to what the police have in their cruisers is $7,000. The portable radio, and I misquoted somebody earlier at $3,500, but it's actually $4,500. But that's one of our lower radios. The ones that the police officers have are about $7,500 to $8,000 each, but they don't need to have all of the fancy frills that we have. It's there for their safety, really, so that they can call us if something happens, so that they can hear the radio if they're being requested to respond to somewhere with this car if we do approve this.
I'm good with the amount of spending. I know we're going to do a little research and have a nice vehicle and something that's safe. But 65 is a lot of money for a vehicle. But if you take out what you just said about the cost of the radio that's in the vehicle and the handheld, I think we're down to under 50 for that vehicle.
Right, and certainly we would shop it for, to try to find a car for the best value. We're not just going to go out and try to find a Cadillac and spend that exact $60,000 or whatever we have.
No, I just didn't want it to be understood that we're going to spend $65,000 for a vehicle plus the others.
No, that's
including
the
radios.
radios.
Take the cost of radio, handheld, all that out of that 65. That's when you're down to, like I said, about, I'm going to guess around 50 or under. Thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to hammer this one point home because of the way it was presented to us, but I will remind everybody, I'll defer to Councilor McCarthy, but I believe we provided our fire chief with all the bells and whistles and SSV rated full-size SUV for $48,000. Yeah. So let's be very careful how much money we spend on a vehicle for these people. I don't have any problem with the idea behind it after hearing Chief CMP. I've said before, I have a lot of faith in him. If this is going to improve the efficiency of the program, I'm all for the program. I worked for many, many years without the benefit of any program like this. So anything we can do to help them in this area, I think is great. But the money and the way it came to us does bother me. So for future reference, I would appreciate we revamp that process just a little bit. Thank you.
Councillor LaChapelle?
Just for clarification, if we approve this dollar amount, it goes to the Finance Committee and they would approve what we purchase?
We issue an RFP for the vehicle that we're looking for. And the various dealerships have the opportunity to respond to that RFP. They can, depending on how it is written, they can respond with any make, model that they want, any age. It will be evaluated compared to the bid, and a recommendation will go to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee has the ability to award that bid or reconsider.
I just bought a new vehicle. I know it's out there. I want to support it, no question about it, but being a good steward for dollar amounts, I would just bring that dollar amount from $65,000 to $50,000, keep the 35, keep the 25, so that's $56,000. That would be, give it a max at that. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor. Administrator Hunter, can you do the math? If we subtract out the radio, how much car can we get at that point?
About $38,000 to $40,000 worth for a vehicle.
And what are your thoughts on that?
It will depend on what we get for responses. I am not a car guru, so I'm probably the last person to weigh in on that. I mean, I think you all also understand, based upon budgets and so forth, that we don't normally spend what we don't need to spend. And this goes, and I've delivered surpluses pretty much every year I've been finance director back to you. So, you know, from that standpoint, we...
I would...
Drop the mic now.
Councilors, if I may. So, you know, building on that, I would argue that it's okay to pass this because there would be a, you know, the RFP, and then the Finance Committee would get final oversight on this. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, why the need for both radios, a car radio and a portable radio?
Well, the car radio transmits way better. Wherever they are in the city, it's got much more power. The portable radio would be something that they bring into the station. It's no different than our police officers. They have a radio on their belt and they have a radio in their car. The transmissions are much, much better on the actual car radio, if you will.
And if they entered a building, they would also bring that the portable radio with them. They would have a radio basically with them at all times.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just ask that the RFP look at both new and used vehicles.
Open it up.
And open it wide open. Don't be overly specific in what you're looking for. You're looking for transportation. I'm sure that there's stuff out there that we could get at probably a third of what we're looking at here. I just think if it's just transportation, years ago, we had a Volkswagen Beetle. Actually, we had two of them, and they were for a motorized beat. Officer would get in that, he would drive from shopping center to shopping center, get out, walk around, do what he had to do. And they suffered immeasurably from the public, because these things were marked just like our regular cruisers. They had a light on the roof, they had the seals on the door, the whole thing. But they were just transportation, and they were certainly a lot less money than the cruisers we were buying. Back then, we were buying them for about $1,000 a piece. Now we're buying them for well over $40,000 a piece. So, yeah. Well, I know I age myself, but I feel safe because I'm sitting next to you, Councilor. Thank you.
Anything else, Councilor Clement?
Thank you, Mr.
Mayor. I think unless there's further comments, I think we're ready to vote on this, Council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Am I to understand we're on agenda item number 4?
Yes, sir.
Item number 4, to approve the lease agreement between the City of Lewiston and United Somali Women of Maine, doing business as Immigrant Resource Center of Maine, for space at City Hall, and authorize the city administrator to execute the lease substantially in form as presented. Requested action, to approve the lease agreement between the City of Lewiston and United Somali Women of Maine, doing business as Immigrant Resource Center of Maine, for space at City Hall, and authorize the city administrator to execute the lease substantially in form as presented.
Move for
May
passage.
I, Councilor Clement, second by Councilor Harriman. Discussion? Madam Clerk, did we go to public comment in the last agenda item?
I believe we did.
No.
I don't think.
Not? No? Okay.
Okay, well, duly noted. We will not make that mistake again. Councilor LaChapelle.
Administration, is this something that's currently being done? Is this a new
This is-
office that's coming in?
This is a new program that the city can utilize services without necessarily having to staff up internally or as a city employee. They receive funds to provide a housing navigator and support services. They want to use space within our general assistance office to help facilitate individuals that are seeking housing vouchers and so forth to look for and obtain housing and to go through a series of programs that have been developed to enable them to become financially viable to support their own housing needs and seek housing and budgeting and a variety of other tools that they're willing to sponsor. They are not City of Lewiston employees. The benefit to us, it provides us not only the income from leasing the 2 workspaces, but also expanding the wraparound services that we're offering our community.
And they're offering this service to everybody? that comes in?
Anybody that goes through general assistance, yes.
We've been hearing for a while that we have a problem with space in City Hall. Do we have space available?
There are 2 empty workstations in general assistance currently.
Because we're missing 2 staff members, or?
There were 1 staff member, and then there was an extra workstation built when the office was redesigned for purposes like this, for expansion and so forth.
Is it going to be, so they have a separate office, a separate room altogether?
It's
or is
workstations.
It's workstations, just a cubicle?
Correct.
Type set.
They're lined up.
Okay. Haven't
Yep.
been in that office, that department. Oh, okay. And that's available to any citizen, any person that goes into that office. We would direct somebody, a family comes in, we would direct them to that section for assistance?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lucianis.
Thank you. I think this is a great resource for our community. I was really pleased to read this, and I did have a question about the second position, though. So the housing navigator, I get. The systems position, is that what you meant when you were talking about the support person?
That's
Like
correct. That's how they're identifying or titling
that's fine.
that position.
Gotcha, thanks.
Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
And now we're up for reports and updates.
Yes, sir, reports and updates.
Councilor Scott.
Excuse me. So again, I apologize, I have missed a few things, but I did want to report on the Lewiston Youth Advisory Council having their mental health awareness event forum at Connors Elementary, and that went very, very well. There was Officer Philippon and Sergeant Dumont were there and spoke a little bit about Project Support You, and they did a phenomenal job representing the Lewiston Police Department chief, so I just want you to know they really did. And then we had the new substance abuse counselor for the high school, along with Megan Parks as a counselor, and, oh my gosh, I forgot the name of the program. It's Armand Osman from Project
Generation North.
Generation North,
thank
yes.
you. And then also, I believe Tri-County Mental Health was there. And
Dr. Vincent
Vincel.
Vincel.
yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
And the amazing thing about it was that when we started talking about mental health, I think that's a reluctant conversation for people to really get into, but it's when the kids started asking some questions, some very deep and heavy questions, that I knew that, this is a young group of community members that are really looking at issues that are very serious and actually quite common for our youth to be talking about and be thinking about. And I was, again, really proud that our youth council took on this project and will continue to do it moving forward. So I just wanted to report on that for now. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great event, and
It
I'm
was.
really proud of our kids.
Yeah.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. Just a quick update from the Transit Committee. We had a transit study commissioned a few months ago. It might have been last year at this point. Made some recommendations, and we are currently developing a survey as well as exploring some technology options to try to get better data on how people use the system before making any changes, because we want any changes, if they are made, to be driven by data and how people use the system and want to use the system.
Finance Committee update, or?
We have nothing.
No, guys.
Moving along, spending money, that's all.
Excellent. I guess we're up to new business at this point?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And I guess this is, I'm not comfortable with some of the bantering back and forth during debate of issues. And I guess I'm going to go to our Madam Clerk. What is Robert's rules in regards to the chair in entering into discussion on a subject when they're not a voting member? Where is that? What is our policy? What is Robert rules? And I guess you don't have to answer that right now. I would like, if the council would so choose, I would like to just have that discussion at some point, just to look at it. And I'm not expecting everybody at 9 o'clock tonight, the week of Christmas, to start getting into it. But I think that's something that we should be looking at, because it's just not a comfortable situation, and it does not bode well for the appearance from the outside. I have had outbursts and in disagreement, and I guess I want to have some kind of definitive answer. If it means that this body comes up with a policy or rule, so be it, and I will abide by any policy or rule. But I'd like to address that so this stuff doesn't happen anymore. Is that an agreement with the council? Does everybody agree that we should discuss this? And this is not just me by myself.
I agree.
Show of thumbs?
I have no problem discussing anything.
Okay. Scott?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I would direct the clerk's attention to Robert's Rules 43:29. And also advise that the Corporation Council has weighed in on this previously.
What was that number again?
I would be happy to discuss the matter.
Thank you. That was all.
Thank you.
Any other new business?
Yes, I'd like to know who presented us with this lovely package.
I believe that was a gift from administration.
It's a gift for your City of Lewiston employees.
Oh,
you thank
thank you.
them for us?
Thank you very much.
Is this our last meeting of the year?
I believe it is.
Yes, it is.
Happy holidays to you all.
Joyeux Noel.
Joyous Noel, yes. Councilor Clement.
Just briefly, the Legislative Policy Committee of MMA just did a survey. There was supposed to be a hearing, I believe, today on the home heating assistance. The overwhelming response from the committee, and I don't know how many members there are on this committee, but there's plenty of members on the committee. The overwhelming response was neither for nor against the bill that was presented. there are several things in the hopper, and, you know, we want to see what shakes out. I think the feeling being this might be the first real volley between the parties in the legislature, and maybe we don't, as an organization, want to expend any political capital right out of the gate. Let's see what they come up with for an answer, and if we don't like it, then we can debate it. But let's, I mean, I've said, and having been in Augusta a number of years, I don't always think Augusta knows what's best for the rest of the state of Maine. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. Just wanted to recognize that Hanukkah began on Sunday and wish a happy Hanukkah to everyone who celebrates.
Absolutely.
Happy Hanukkah.
Yep.
Tell the city, Mr. Mayor, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, all of it.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, yes, Happy Hanukkah to everyone. In Hungarian, it's Boldog Karácsony. Yeah. Feliz Navidad.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Councilor Clement, second by Councilor Pease. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
And Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Lewiston.
By the way, we're never.